Hello and welcome. I'm glad you joined us. I'm Georgia, lead technical trainer at Microsoft. In this session, we'll cover an introduction to Microsoft Entra. Microsoft Entra sits at the center of secure access in today's cloud-driven world, and we'll explore how it helps us protect identities, control access, and keep our organizations safe while enabling seamless productivity. As our digital environments grow and security threats become more sophisticated, Entra gives us the tools to ensure the right people have the right access at the right time, supporting zero trust principles and reducing risk across your apps, devices, and services. Together, we'll go through a friendly, practical introduction to Entra's key capabilities, like authentication, conditional access, and identity governance, so we can understand why identity is now our first line of defense and how Entra helps us build a stronger, smarter security foundation. So let's get started with the session. We will go through the essentials of Microsoft Entra ID by exploring what it is, why it matters, and how it helps organizations manage and protect identities. We'll walk through the core functions of Microsoft Entra ID, the different types of identities it supports, and how authentication and access are handled in modern cloud and hybrid environments. You'll also get a high-level view of access management, identity protection, and governance capabilities. So by the end of this session, you'll have a clear picture of how Microsoft Entra fits into a secure identity strategy and what topics we'll build on in the modules ahead. Let's start by describing the function and identity types of Microsoft Entra ID. In this section, we set the stage for everything that follows by introducing the core ideas behind Microsoft Entra ID. We'll focus on what Microsoft Entra ID is, why it's so important in modern organizations, and the different types of identities it supports. You'll also be introduced to the concept of hybrid identity, helping you understand how organizations securely connect on-premises and cloud environments. By the end of this session, you're going to have a clear, practical foundation that makes the more advanced identity access and security topics much easier to follow. Microsoft Entra ID is Microsoft's cloud-based identity and access management service that helps organizations manage who can sign in and what they can access. It acts as a central identity system for cloud and on-premises applications, allowing employees, guests, and partners to use a single digital identity across many resources. When organizations adopt services like Azure or Microsoft 365, they use a Microsoft Entra tenant or directory to manage identities and access. Specific Entra capabilities depend on configuration and licensing. By synchronizing with on-premises Active Directory, Microsoft Entra ID supports hybrid environments and enables secure access to internal apps, external software as a service services like Microsoft 365, and devices such as laptops and mobile phones, all from one directory. Microsoft Entra ID works by storing and managing identities such as users, groups, devices, and applications inside a tenant, which represents a single organization. This directory or tenant allows administrators to control access, support collaboration with external users, and protect identities using built-in security features. A key concept is improving your identity security posture, which is often measured and guided through security posture recommendations and scoring experiences. For example, the Microsoft Secure Score, depending on the services you use. Microsoft Entra ID also supports multi-tenant scenarios, which is useful for organizations with multiple business units, subsidiaries, or specific regulatory boundaries. Overall, the service simplifies identity management, improves security, and enables modern work by ensuring the right people and systems can securely access the right resources, whether they're in the cloud or on-premises. As we dive deeper in the capabilities of Microsoft Entra ID, let's talk about the different identity types that Entra ID can manage and why that matters in real-world scenarios. Microsoft Entra allows you to assign identities not just to people, but also to devices and software workloads, creating a consistent way to control access. Human identities include internal users, such as employees, and external users like partners, vendors, and customers, while device identities cover anything from laptops, mobile phones, and any other hardware. Workload identities represent applications, virtual machines, and services that need to securely authenticate to other resources without relying on shared passwords. This model works by giving every identity a clear role and authentication method, which makes access decisions more secure and manageable. For people, Entra ID distinguishes between members and guests, and between internal and external authentication, helping organizations collaborate safely while limiting unnecessary privileges. An organization creates member accounts for employees so they can authenticate internally and have full access to organizational resources, such as Microsoft 365, internal applications, and on-premises systems synced to Microsoft Entra ID. Members are trusted identities that represent people who are part of the organization and typically need ongoing, broad access, aligned to their job role, for example. A new hire, for example, will join the company and need access to Outlook, Teams, SharePoint, or any line of business apps. On the other hand, an organization might opt for guest accounts to allow external users, such as partners, vendors, or consultants, to collaborate securely without giving them full internal access. Guests authenticate using their own external identity, but are given limited controlled access to specific resources. For example, a consulting partner is invited as a guest to access a specific Teams channel or SharePoint site for a project. For applications and services, workload identities such as service principals and managed identities remove the need for developers to handle credentials manually, reducing security risks. An organization needs to deploy a custom line of business applications, for example, that needs to read data from Microsoft Graph and write logs to Azure resources. A service principal gives that application its own identity in Microsoft Entra ID, allowing it to authenticate and access resources securely without using a user account. The app is granted only the permissions it needs, following the least privilege principles, according to Zero Trust. Managed identities work similarly, but for services. For example, an Azure virtual machine runs an automated script that must access the Azure Key Vault to retrieve secrets. A managed identity allows the virtual machine to authenticate to Azure services without storing or managing credentials. Microsoft Entra ID automatically handles the identity lifecycle, reducing the risk of leaked credentials and simplifying management. Device identities support scenarios like bring your own device, corporate-owned devices, and hybrid joint environments. The benefit is a flexible identity system that improves security but also supports modern work patterns and ensures the right users, devices, and apps can access the right resources at the right time. Let's explore the Microsoft Entra ID user settings together. In this demo, we'll access Microsoft Entra ID and walk through the various settings for an existing user that we have. As you can see, I've already signed in to entra.microsoft.com with my account, and in order to see my users, I can scroll down and click on the Users tab. Here, you can see all the users and browse through their options. You can also see any deleted users and restore them or do bulk operations. But in order to use and see the options for one single user, you can go to the user by clicking on their name. In the Overview tab, you can see a little bit more information, monitoring, audit, and logs. As you go through, you can see the assigned roles they have by clicking on Assigned Roles, if they have any. And these are Entra ID roles, right? You can see any units or groups they're part of, and you can change the membership by going to Add Memberships or by clicking on an existing membership and removing it. So you can manage easily from which groups this user has access to. Finally, you can browse through their licensing and devices. You can see which licenses this user has. For example, this one has Microsoft 365 without Teams. If you want to add, remove, or reprocess any licenses, you will need to do that through the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. But you can still see all the information through Microsoft Entra per user. Finally, if the user has any devices, you can see their devices and manage them here. From here, you can see the information, the operating system, and a few other information per device. In this demo, we talked about the settings of an existing user, including groups, which can be assigned, the availability of their roles, and how to assign them user licenses. But what if an organization cannot or does not want to fully migrate their identity management to the cloud? This is where hybrid identity comes in. Hybrid identity means users have a single, consistent identity they can use to access both on-premises and cloud resources. Instead of juggling separate accounts, many organizations run a mix of local applications and cloud services, and users expect seamless access, no matter where the app lives. Microsoft Entra ID supports this by creating a common identity that works across environments, improving the user experience while keeping access secure. Hybrid identity works through provisioning and synchronization between on-premises Active Directory and Microsoft Entra ID. Users that already exist on premises are provisioned into the cloud, and synchronization ensures identity information such as users and groups stays consistent. Microsoft Entra ID Connect's Cloud Sync is one method used to support this process, helping organizations keep identities aligned without a lot of complex manual work. The benefits are significant. Users sign in once and access everything they need, and administrators reduce that identity sprawl. And the security teams all can apply consistent policies across environments. Overall, hybrid identity helps organizations modernize at their own pace while maintaining strong security and simple access. Now that we have walked through the function and identity types of Microsoft Entra ID, we are ready to explore the access management capabilities of Microsoft Entra. In this part, we'll concentrate on the authentication capabilities of Microsoft Entra ID, starting with the different authentication methods available. Then we'll move into multifactor authentication and why it's so important for security. Finally, we will look at password protection and management. The goal of this section is to help you understand how Microsoft Entra ID verifies who a user is, strengthens that sign-in security beyond just passwords, and protects the whole organization from common identity attacks in a simple and practical way. Authentication in Microsoft Entra ID is the process of verifying a user's identity, and it supports a wide range of methods designed to balance security and ease of use. Traditional passwords are still supported, but they are widely recognized as weak on their own because they are easy to guess, steal, or forget. To strengthen sign-ins, Microsoft Entra ID adds options like phone-based authentication using SMS or voice calls, as well as one-time passcodes generated by Oath software or hardware tokens. These methods can be used as primary or secondary authentication, most commonly as part of multifactor authentication to add an extra layer of protection beyond just a password. Microsoft Entra also strongly promotes passwordless authentication, which removes passwords from the sign-in experience altogether. Options such as Windows Hello for Business, the Microsoft Authenticator app, FIDO2 security keys, and certificate-based authentication allows users to sign in using biometrics, secure devices, or cryptographic credentials instead of something they need to remember. These methods work by providing possession of a trusted device or certificate, and, in some cases, something like user biometrics, like a fingerprint or a face scan. The result is a sign-in experience that is faster for users and significantly more resistant to attacks like phishing or password spray. By offering multiple authentication methods and encouraging passwordless approaches, Microsoft Entra ID helps organizations improve security, reduce credential theft, and give users a smoother, more reliable way to access apps and devices. Building on the idea of stronger and passwordless sign-in methods, Microsoft Entra ID adds an extra layer of protection through multifactor authentication, often called MFA. MFA dramatically improves security by requiring more than one form of verification during sign-in, instead of relying on just the password. It works by combining at least 2 or even 3 factors, which is something you know, like a password or a PIN, something you have, like a phone or security key, or something you are, like a fingerprint or face scan. During sign-in, users might be asked to approve a notification in the Microsoft Authenticator app, enter a one-time code, answer a phone call, or use a biometric method, depending on how MFA is configured. This approach makes it much harder for attackers to gain access, even if they already know the user's password. MFA is commonly used to protect access for cloud apps, sensitive data, and administrative accounts, and it plays a key role in Microsoft Entra security defaults. Security defaults provide a baseline of identity security by enforcing stronger sign-in protections, including MFA for administrators and MFA challenges for users when needed. And they're designed for organizations that want improved security without building custom conditional access policies. These defaults are especially useful for organizations that want a strong baseline for security without complex configuration or even premium licenses. MFA significantly reduces the risk of account compromise. It protects identities from common attacks and still keeps the user experience relatively simple. By combining MFA with modern authentication methods like passwordless sign-in, Microsoft Entra helps organizations strike the right balance between strong security and everyday usability. Passwordless does not mean we forget the password completely, though. Microsoft Entra ID also focuses on strengthening the password itself through password protection and management. Password protection helps prevent users from choosing weak or easily guessed passwords by automatically blocking them. Microsoft Entra ID applies a global banned password list that is always on and maintained by Microsoft using real-world attack data. This list detects common passwords and their variations, like simple substitutions or predictable patterns, and stops users from using them during password changes or resets. The goal is simple: reduce the risk of compromised accounts before the attack begins. You can go a step further by adding custom banned password lists tailored to your business. These lists can block passwords that include company names, locations, product names, or internal terms that attackers might easily guess. Microsoft Entra Password Protection also defends against password spray attacks by blocking commonly used weak passwords at scale. In hybrid environments, this protection can be extended to on-premises Active Directory, so the same rules apply whether a user changes their password in the cloud or on-premises. The benefit is consistent and stronger password security everywhere, fewer attacks, and less disruption for users and IT teams. Let's explore together how to enable the different types of authentication methods and settings for multi-factor authentication. In this demo, we'll explore the various settings available for authentication in Microsoft Entra. I've already logged in with my account at entra.microsoft.com, and let's review together how multi-factor authentication is enabled and what authentication methods we have. To check multi-factor authentication, we scroll down here on the left and click on multi-factor authentication. From here, you can go to Configure for the multi-factor authentication settings. You can see a list of your users, you can search, and you can choose one or more users to enable MFA. You can also choose one or more users to check and see what MFA settings they have. For example, if they're required to provide their contact information again, or if you want to restore multi-factor authentication or remember the devices, and so on. Here on the next tab, you can also see some service settings. For example, if we allow a password-specific trust IP or verification options available to users, if we want to remember multi-factor authentication on trusted devices, and for how long. Now let's explore together the authentication methods that we have available now. Depending on the policy you have, you might have more than one allowed. For example, these are the built-in methods that can target one or more users. You can create passkeys, Microsoft Authenticator, SMS, voice call, or simple email one-time passcodes. That's up to you. You can always create and add an external method if you want, or you can enable one of the built-in ones. So for example, if you want SMS and you want to target a specific groups of users, you can click here and make it available to all users to log in with multi-factor authentication using SMS. You can even exclude users from using this specific setting if you want to. In this demo, we talked about the authentication methods available in Microsoft Entra, and we saw a little bit how we can configure a few parameters within the MFA process. Securing access does not stop at authentication methods. Let's talk about the access management capabilities of Microsoft Entra. Now that we have seen how Microsoft Entra verifies identity and strengthens sign-in security, let's shift our focus to how access is actually controlled after a user is authenticated. In this section, we will explore access management capabilities in Microsoft Entra, starting with conditional access, which uses simple if-then logic to decide when access should be allowed, restricted, or blocked, based on signals like user device, location, and risk. We also introduce global secure access, which brings identity, network, and endpoint controls together to secure access to apps and resources from anywhere. Finally, we will take a look at Microsoft Entra roles and role-based access control, showing how organizations can assign the right level of permissions to the right people and reduce risk by following the principle of least privilege. Conditional access in Microsoft Entra works like a smart decision engine that evaluates signals during sign-in, such as who the user is, which app they're trying to access, the device they're using, their location, and any detected risk. These signals are defined through assignments which answer the who, what, where, and when. When all assignment conditions are met, the policy is triggered, and an access decision is made. That decision can block access completely, grant access, or grant access only after extra requirements are met, such as multi-factor authentication or using a compliant device. This allows organizations to move beyond simple username and password checks and make access decisions that adapt to real-world risk. Conditional access is widely used to protect sensitive apps and data while still keeping access smooth for trusted scenarios. For example, a finance employee signs in to Microsoft 365 from a personal laptop while traveling. Conditional access has to evaluate multiple signals. User, a member of the finance group. Location, signing from an unfamiliar country. Device, not marked as compliant. Risk, medium sign-in risk detected. The policy outcome for that example would be that access is granted only if the user completes multi-factor authentication and uses a compliant device. If conditions aren't met, access is blocked. Session controls can also be applied to limit what the users can do after they sign in, such as blocking downloads or enforcing sign-in frequency. The benefit is strong security without unnecessary friction. Users only see extra security prompts when risk increases. By automatically enforcing consistent rules across cloud apps and services, conditional access helps organizations reduce breaches, supports zero-trust principles, and gives users safe access to what they need whenever they need it. Let's review Microsoft Entra Conditional Access in a quick demo. In this demo, we'll work through the various options available for conditional access. As you can see, I've already logged in through entra.microsoft.com, and in order to see the conditional access policies, I have to scroll down to conditional access. Here, you can manage a few things regarding the policies like VPN connectivity or authentication contexts and more. Now, the first step in creating a new policy is to go to Create and provide a name for that policy. Next, you have several options under Assignments. Since conditional access policies are like if-then statements, the assignment settings are like these if statements. If you go to Users or Agents, you can select to which users the policy applies to. It can be none or everybody, or it can exclude specific groups or specific users. You can select internal, external users, role, and everything that's available here. Next, you can target resources, and this selects what resources the policy applies to, like cloud apps, for example. It could be also a user action or an authentication context. For this, as well, you can exclude or include specific resources. Then we have the network. Here is where you can configure user access, but based on network or physical location. Of course, you can exclude, or include only trusted networks and locations, for example, the office or a specific IP, or countries around the world that are safe and approved. But you can also limit this to specific networks. Next, we're going to the condition part. This is where the access is control on specific signals. For example, user risk level, sign-in risk level, or insider risk level, and more. A user risk represents the probability that a given identity or account is compromised. These risks are calculated offline using Microsoft's internal and external threat intelligence sources. A sign-in risk represents the probability that a given authentication request isn't authorized by the identity owner. Examples can include if the sign-in is from an anonymous IP or atypical travel. The insider risk is configured in adaptive protection and assesses the risk based on a user's data-related activity. So, for example, if you've never logged in somewhere, or you log in once a day or once a month, and you suddenly log in 10 times from a very different location, that's suspicious, right? And there are more here, like specific device platforms, client apps. You can filter through all of them. You can also enable or disable authentication flows. Now, finally, as you've created this, these are the conditions, right? So then we go to what happens. These are the access control, and we can grant or block access based on these configurations. So if you block access, that's it, you blocked access. But even if you grant access, you can do it restrictively under specific conditions. So if you get a request from an atypical location, you can say, hey, for this one, let's require multifactor authentication or increase the authentication strength, or you need to require a password change, which will take the user through different protocols. To do so, we can make sure that the credentials in the user is doing this intentionally, and there isn't any security incidents here. Additionally, we can go and give access for a specific session, a browser session, for example, allow it to be persistent. Or we can require specific protections to access the resources that we have here. And here are a few options that you can work through everything you set up, both with the Azure portal or the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. In this demo, we walk through the various options available to create a conditional access policy. Beyond conditional access, Microsoft Entra now extends protection beyond sign-in to how users actually reach apps and data. Microsoft Entra Global Secure Access brings together identity, network, and endpoint controls to secure access to any application or resource, from any location, device, or identity. It is the unifying umbrella for Microsoft Entra Internet Access and Microsoft Entra Private Access, creating a single approach to protecting both internet-based apps and private corporate resources. This solution represents a new security category called Security Service Edge, where access decisions are identity-driven and continuously evaluated rather than relying on a traditional network perimeter. Global Secure Access works through a lightweight client on user devices that routes specific traffic profiles through Entra Internet Access or Entra Private Access. Internet Access secures software as a service applications and general web traffic with controls like tenant restrictions, web content filtering, and protection against identity or token theft, while Private Access provides secure access to internal corporate resources. It can replace legacy VPNs. This approach reduces lateral movement, limits overprivileged users, and integrates deeply with conditional access to apply real-time, risk-based decisions. The benefits are clear. We have stronger zero-trust security, we have better visibility through dashboards and traffic logs, and a smoother experience for users who can securely access apps, whether they are in the office or working remotely. The next layer of control is about who can access and manage identity itself. Microsoft Entra Roles and Role-Based Access Control, or RBAC, define permissions for managing Microsoft Entra resources, such as users, group, applications, and settings. Instead of giving everybody full control, Entra uses roles to bundle specific permissions for specific jobs. There are built-in roles like Global Administrator, User Administrator, and Billing Administrator, each designed for common responsibilities. These roles fall into clear categories. Entra-specific roles that manage identity objects, like service-specific roles for services like Exchange or Intune, and cross-service roles, such as Security Administrator, that span multiple Microsoft 365 services. For example, the IT help desk is responsible for creating and managing user accounts, but should not have access to security settings or billing. The organization assigns the user administrator role instead of global administrator. With Microsoft Entra Role-Based Access Control, the help desk can create users, reset passwords, and manage groups, using only the permissions required for their job, while sensitive tenant-wide settings remain protected. This structure makes it easier to understand who can do what and where. RBAC works by assigning a role to a user at the right scope, either across the entire tenant or limited to a specific resource, like an application. Custom roles add flexibility by letting organizations create their own permission sets when built-in roles are too broad. The biggest benefit is security through least privilege. Users get only the access they need to do their job and nothing more. This reduces the impact of compromised accounts and helps prevent accidental changes. It is also important to distinguish Microsoft Entra Role-Based Access Control from Azure Role-Based Access Control. Entra Role-Based Access Control controls identity resources, while Azure Role-Based Access Control controls Azure infrastructure, like virtual machines and storage. Together, they provide clear, auditable, and safer access management across identity and cloud resources. So how do we strike that right balance between strong identity security and everyday user efficiency, while still keeping everything visible and auditable? This is where the identity protection and governance capabilities of Microsoft Entra play a key role. In this section, we will take a look at identity governance and identity protection, and how Microsoft Entra helps organizations balance strong security with user productivity. We will explore how identities are managed throughout their lifecycle, from join to move to leave, and how privileged access is controlled and monitored, and how risky users and sign-ins are detected and remediated. This section also introduces how Microsoft Entra works with Microsoft Security Copilot to provide clear insights, recommendations, and faster response to identity risks by helping you justify audits and continuously improve your security posture. Identity governance in Microsoft Entra is about making sure the right people have the right access to the right resources and only for as long as they need it. It focuses on governing the identity lifecycle and the access lifecycle, while also securing privileged access used for administration. A common way to think about this is the join, move, and leave model. When someone joins an organization, a digital identity is created and access is granted. As they move into new roles, access is updated to match their responsibilities. When they leave, access is removed to reduce risk while still keeping records for audit purposes. Microsoft Entra Identity Governance helps answer important business and security questions, such as who should have access to which resources, what they're doing with that access, and whether controls are working as intended. It supports real-world use cases like onboarding employees, managing partners and vendors, and handling role changes without manual effort. Tools such as dynamic groups help automate access decisions based on user or device attributes, keeping access aligned as things change. Privileged access is also closely monitored, since administrator roles carry higher risk. The why is clear, I would say. Organizations really reduce overprivileged users and improving security in the process. That can demonstrate to auditors clearly that access is controlled, reviewed, and justified, all while supporting everyday work. This lifecycle is maintained by utilizing access reviews. Microsoft Entra introduces access reviews as a practical way to regularly check and confirm who should have access to what. Access reviews let organizations review group memberships, application access, and role assignments for both internal users and guests. Instead of assuming access is still valid, reviewers are prompted to approve or deny continued access, helping ensure that only the right people retain the permissions to sensitive resources. This is especially useful when employees change roles, contractors leave or change, or guest access should expire, all common scenarios that can otherwise lead to overprivileged accounts. For example, let's say an organization discovers that a former contractor still has access to a finance SharePoint site containing payroll and acquisition data 6 months after the project ended. No alerts were triggered because access was granted long ago. The security team launches a Microsoft Entra Access review for the finance app and any related groups. The finance managers are required now to explicitly approve or deny access for each user. During the review, active employees who are approved and the contractor and 2 inactive guests' accounts are removed automatically when the review completes. Access reviews can be scheduled to run periodically and can include multi-stage reviews with up to 3 stages and different reviewers involved. This supports audits and recertification requirements while spreading responsibility across the right stakeholders such as manager, app owners, security teams. Reviews do not change access until they're completed, and results can be applied manually or automatically, reducing any administrative effort required. And why stop there? Not every account has the same impact if compromised. The next step is to control how powerful access is used. Privileged Identity Management, or PIM, in Microsoft Entra focuses on managing administrative access, but in a safer, more controlled way. Admin roles have a much higher level of privilege, so PIM reduces the risk by making sure these permissions are only active when they are truly needed. Instead of permanent admin access, users activate roles just in time for a limited period, and often with approval and multifactor authentication. Let's see an example. At 2 o'clock in the morning, security alerts indicate suspicious activity targeting the Microsoft Entra tenant. An attacker is attempting privilege escalation using compromised credentials. Without PIM, several admins have permanent global administrator access. If one account is compromised, the attacker immediately gains full control. Users, roles, security settings, and tenant lockout are all at risk. But with Microsoft Entra Privileged Identity Management enabled, all admins are eligible but not permanently assigned to privileged roles. The on-call security admin receives an alert and activates the global administrator role just in time. That activation requires MFA and business justification and manager approval. Access is given, but it's time-bound, for example, 1 hour. All these actions are logged and auditable. The admin can still stop the attack, reset credentials, review sign-in logs, and when the time window expires, privileged access is automatically removed. PIM works by adding visibility, control, and accountability to privileged access. Every activation is logged, notification can be sent, and a full audit history is available for review. This is especially useful for organizations that want to reduce the chance of misuse, but also meet compliance requirements, or simply limiting the impact of any compromised accounts. Common use cases include securing global administrator roles, managing access for IT staff or contractors even, and protecting sensitive cloud and Microsoft 365 resources. The result? Stronger security with flexibility. Administrators can still do their jobs, but access is time-bound, monitored, and easier to justify and audit. After securing privileged access with PIM, we need to think about how to identify and respond to identity risk in real time. Microsoft Entra Identity Protection helps organizations detect and investigate and remediate identity-based risks for both users and workload identities. It continuously analyzes trillions of signals to spot suspicious activity, such as risky sign-ins or leaked credentials. Risks are classified as sign-in risk or user risk, and they are surfaced through clear reports, including, but not limited to, risk detections, risky sign-ins, risky users, risky workload identities. All of these insights help security teams quickly understand what's happening and where the attention is truly needed. Identity protection does not just detect risk, it also helps organizations act. Risks can trigger automated remediation, like requiring multifactor authentication, forcing a password reset, or blocking access altogether until the risk is resolved. When automation is not enabled, administrators can investigate and take manual actions, such as confirming compromise or dismissing risk. Risk data can also be exported to other security tools for deeper analysis. A key benefit is integration with Conditional Access and Microsoft Security Copilot, which helps teams make faster, smarter decisions, reduce the account compromise, and protect the identities before the attackers can cause any damage. Microsoft Entra, as I mentioned, integrates with Microsoft Security Copilot to help security analysts mostly understand identity risks faster using natural language. This integration is available as a standalone experience with built-in prompts and also as an embedded experience directly inside Microsoft Entra. A key example is the Risky Users Report, where Copilot summarizes a user's risk level, highlights what triggered the risk, and explains what it means in clear language. Microsoft Security Copilot works by pulling signals and context from Microsoft Entra and presenting them in easy-to-read summaries with recommended next steps. Analysts can ask questions, explore audit logs, sign-in activity, or risk details without switching tools or writing complex queries. This is especially useful during investigations where time matters. By combining Entra identity data with Copilot intelligence, organizations can respond to identity threats more effectively while keeping security operations efficient and approachable. Now let's do a quick recap. In this section, we have seen how Microsoft Entra ID provides a single identity system, supports different identity types, and enables hybrid identity across cloud and on-premises environments. We then walked through authentication capabilities, including modern and passwordless methods, multifactor authentication, and password protection. We also covered access management with conditional access, global secure access, and role-based access control, before closing with identity governance and protection features like access reviews, PIM, and identity protection. With these capabilities, you can use Microsoft Entra to help your organization secure identities, manage access, reduce risk, and support secure and efficient work across your users, your apps, and any devices. This concludes our session. There are many ways to continue your learning journey. Keep the momentum going by exploring the rest of the videos in this course or discovering your next favorite topic on Microsoft Learn at aka.ms/learn. Thank you for watching, and remember, security starts with you.